The execution chamber was designed to inspire obedience. Not justice. Not mercy. Obedience. A circular hole carved from black volcanic stone stretched wider than a stadium, its ceiling vanishing into shadow high above. 12 hovering thrones formed a half-ring overlooking a massive pit at the center of the chamber. Behind each throne burned the sigil of a dominant galactic species, empires forged through conquest, not diplomacy. And below them slept the dragon beast. It lay coiled within a reinforced energy containment field, scales dark as burned iron, each one edged faintly in ember glow. Its body was massive, easily 30 meters from horn to tail. Wings folded tight against its back like armored sails. Thick smoke rose slowly from its nostrils, drifting toward the ceiling in lazy spirals. It was not an animal. It was a message. For centuries, the Galactic Council had used it as a demonstration of authority. Rebels were thrown into the pit. Dissidents. Political threats. Criminals deemed too dangerous for imprisonment. None had survived. The Council called it necessary. The citizens called it tradition. The galaxy called it fear. Today, the chamber was full. Representatives from dozens of star systems filled the elevated galleries. Some watched through transparent barriers. Others projected holographic avatars from distant worlds. All had come to see humanity kneel. The chamber doors opened with a heavy metallic groan. 2 armored guards escorted a human girl down the central walkway. Myra Hale. 17. Light skin marked faintly with dust from transport restraints. Brown hair tied back in a practical ponytail, though loose strands had fallen around her face. She wore no armor. No ceremonial robes. Just a simple gray work jacket and dark trousers. Her wrists were bound, but she did not struggle. She did not bow her head. She walked with steady steps. A murmur rippled through the chamber. That's her? She's just a child. Humans send children as envoys now. She defied a council decree. She refused tribute compliance. She stood in front of a transport convoy and told Imperial enforcers to leave. One of the counselors leaned forward in his hovering throne. His elongated fingers tapped against the armrest. Human defiance spreads, he announced, voice amplified across the chamber. This offering serves as correction. Myra did not look up at him. She looked forward. Toward the pit. Toward the thing coiled inside it. The energy barrier shimmered faintly, a translucent dome of crackling force surrounding the dragon beast. Its chest rose slowly. Fell. The ground vibrated slightly with each breath. The guards stopped at the edge of the pit. One of them hesitated. Orders confirmed, the High Chancellor said. The barrier flickered briefly as the field shifted to partial containment. The guards removed Myra's wrist restraints. She rubbed her wrists once. Not in fear. In circulation. Final words, the Chancellor asked mockingly. Myra finally looked up. Her expression was calm. Focused. You don't understand what you're doing, she said quietly. A few counselors laughed. That is precisely the point. The energy barrier fully disengaged with a thunderous hum. The guards shoved her forward. She stumbled half a step. Then regained her footing before reaching the edge. And stepped down into the pit on her own. The chamber went silent. The dragon's eye opened. It was the size of a transport engine. Molten gold. Vertical pupil narrowing slowly as it adjusted to the light. Smoke thickened from its nostrils. A low rumble began deep in its chest, not yet a roar. Just awareness. The galleries leaned forward in anticipation. The dragon uncoiled. Stone cracked beneath its shifting weight. Its wings unfolded partially, casting enormous shadows across the pit. Myra stood alone on the stone floor, dwarfed by scale. She did not run. She did not scream. She simply turned to face it fully. The dragon's head lowered slowly, massive horns scraping against the upper rim of the pit. Each exhale blasted hot air across the chamber floor, scattering dust and ash around her boots. The High Chancellor smiled thinly. Observe, he said to the assembly. This is the consequence of defiance. The dragon's claw extended forward, each talon longer than Myra's arm. It stopped inches from her. Heat radiated from its scales. The rumble in its chest deepened. Spectators held their breath. Security forces tightened formation around the chamber walls. Myra lifted her chin slightly. She looked directly into the dragon's burning eye. And in that moment, the rumble stopped. The dragon's pupil shifted. Narrowed further. Not in hunger. Not in excitement. Something else. Recognition. A murmur spread through the galleries. That is not typical behavior. Why hasn't it struck? The dragon's massive head lowered further until its snout hovered directly in front of Myra. The air shimmered with heat between them. She raised her hand slowly. Not trembling. Not defensive. Just steady. High above, the Chancellor's smile faded slightly. Why is it hesitating? No one answered. Because something surreal was beginning. And for the first time in centuries, the dragon beast was not acting on command. It was watching her. As if remembering. The dragon's eye did not blink. It adjusted. The vertical pupil narrowing to a razor-thin line as it studied the small human standing beneath it. The chamber was utterly silent now. No whispers. No movement in the galleries. Even the counselors above leaned forward in their hovering thrones, their expressions shifting from arrogance to confusion. The dragon's breath rolled over Myra like the exhaust from a furnace. Her jacket fluttered slightly in the heated current. Her hair tugged loose against the wind of it. Still, she did not step back. She did not raise her hands in surrender. She simply stood. The dragon lowered its head further. Massive horns scraped against the rim of the pit, carving grooves into stone. Sparks flickered and fell like embers. Its claws flexed once against the chamber floor. The sound echoed like distant thunder. This delay is irregular, one counselor muttered. Engage stimulus protocol, another suggested quietly. The High Chancellor raised a hand sharply. No. His voice remained controlled. Let the demonstration proceed. Below them, Myra inhaled slowly. The dragon's molten eye reflected her image, small, fragile, human. And something shifted within that gaze. It was no longer predatory focus. It was evaluation. She took a single step forward. Gasps broke through the silence. Security forces immediately raised their weapons along the chamber perimeter. The dragon's head tilted slightly. The movement was subtle, but unmistakable. Curiosity. The massive snout lowered until it hovered just above her shoulder height. The heat from its scales prickled against her skin. Its breath was steady. Measured. The rumble in its chest returned, but softer now. Less like a warning. More like resonance. Myra lifted her hand slowly. Her fingers were steady. The dragon's pupils constricted. The galleries leaned forward as one. Is she attempting to touch it? She will trigger its strike reflex. Her palm hovered inches from the dragon's armored snout. She did not rush. Did not flinch. She whispered something. The words were too soft for chamber microphones to capture. But the dragon heard them. The rumble stopped completely. Its wings, half spread in tension, lowered by a fraction. Security officers looked toward the Chancellor for permission to intervene. The Chancellor did not speak. Because something impossible was happening. The dragon exhaled again. But not in aggression. Not in a warning blast of flame. It released a slow, controlled breath. Warm. Almost careful. The heat washed over Myra's face without scorching. Her hand closed the final distance. Her palm touched the dragon's scales. A murmur surged through the chamber like a wave. No. It should have struck. It always strikes. The dragon did not move away. It did not recoil. Its eye remained fixed on her. The molten glow within it flickered, not brighter, but deeper. Like an ember catching oxygen. Myra stepped closer. Now close enough that one of the dragon's horns brushed the stone behind her. Her hand remained pressed against its snout. She spoke again, louder this time. I remember. The chamber trembled. The dragon's massive body shifted. Not forward. Down. Its head lowered another inch. The crowd froze. One counselor's voice cracked. What is she doing? The dragon's claws scraped once against the stone floor, not in attack. In adjustment. Its posture was changing. Myra's voice remained calm. You do too. The dragon's eye widened slightly. And for the first time in recorded history, the dragon did not bare its teeth. It did not snap its jaws. It did not roar. Instead, it closed its eye. Just for a second. When it opened it again, the heat within it had changed. High above, the Chancellor stood from his throne. This is unacceptable, he hissed. Activate command override. An engineer frantically tapped at control panels. Override signal transmitting. The dragon's body twitched. A pulse of energy surged through hidden control implants embedded deep beneath its scales. The creature stiffened violently. The rumble in its chest deepened. Not at Myra. At the signal. Its wings flared abruptly, nearly shattering the upper edges of the pit. Energy restraints flickered. The galleries erupted into panicked whispers. It's resisting. Override strength decreasing. The dragon's eye snapped open fully. Molten gold blazing brighter than before. But it did not turn toward Myra. It lifted its head slowly. And looked up. At the council. A deep, resonant growl rolled through the chamber, not chaotic. Directed. The High Chancellor's voice wavered for the first time. Increase signal strength. We're at maximum. Below, Myra did not step away. She moved closer. Placing her other hand against the dragon's armor. Easy, she whispered. The growl softened slightly. Not obedience. Acknowledgement. The control signal flickered again. Then failed. Completely. The engineer stepped back from the console, pale. Override non-responsive. Silence descended over the chamber once more. The dragon lowered its head again. Not in submission. In alignment. Its massive body shifted until it stood partially between Myra and the council's elevated thrones. Protective. The surreal had become undeniable. The dragon beast. The symbol of terror. The executioner. The unquestioned weapon of the council. Was no longer acting like one. And the human girl they had thrown into the pit as sacrifice. Was not afraid. She was steady. As if she had known this would happen all along. High above, the Chancellor whispered hoarsely. What did she say to it? No one answered. Because whatever she had said, the dragon had understood. The dragon did not move for several long seconds. It stood between Myra and the council thrones, wings partially extended, massive frame blocking any direct line of sight to her. The chamber, once built for spectacle, now felt fragile. Too small. Too brittle. The High Chancellor gripped the edge of his hovering throne. Re-engage override, he ordered. It's not responding, the engineer repeated, voice shaking. Neural command pathways are active, but redirected. Redirected to what? The engineer swallowed. To her. A ripple of alarm swept across the chamber. Below, Myra's hands remained steady against the dragon's armor. Its scales were warm, not scorching. The ember-like glow beneath them pulsed faintly in rhythm with its breathing. She stepped slightly to its side so she could see its eye again. The molten gold iris flickered, not with aggression. With something deeper. Something ancient. You remember, she said quietly. The dragon's pupil narrowed. The ember glow along its spine flared brighter. Not violent. Not destructive. Alive. The galleries erupted in nervous murmurs. This is impossible. The dragon does not bond. It does not recognize individuals. But it was recognizing her. Myra leaned her forehead lightly against the dragon's armored snout. Security forces along the perimeter raised weapons again. The High Chancellor's voice cut sharply through the noise. If it advances, fire. The dragon's ear ridges twitched at the sound. It slowly lifted its head. Higher. Higher still. Until its gaze fixed directly on the council. Its chest expanded. The glow beneath its scales intensified. The chamber temperature rose sharply. One councillor stood abruptly. Containment fields, activate. Energy barriers surged around the pit again. But the dragon did not lash out. It did not charge. Instead, it closed its eyes. A low, resonant vibration began in its chest. Not a growl. Not a roar. A tone. Deep. Ancient. The stone beneath Myra's boots began to hum in response. Hairline fractures spread across the chamber floor, not from force. From resonance. The dragon opened its mouth slowly. But no flame emerged. Instead, light poured from within. Not fire. Memory. The chamber filled with a projected vision, scales reflecting starlight, skies burning red, a battlefield long forgotten. The council gasped. That's archival war imagery. No, it predates the archives. The vision expanded across the chamber walls. A time before the council. Before empires. Before control implants. The dragon, smaller then, flying freely across alien skies. Not a weapon. A guardian. Below it, humans. Early explorers. Fragile settlements. Standing not in fear, but in cooperation. One human figure reached up toward the dragon in the vision. A young girl. Brown hair tied back. Calm eyes. The same expression Myra wore now. Recognition rippled through the assembly. Humans bonded with them before. That can't be verified. The council erased pre-imperial archives. The dragon's resonance deepened. The memory shifted. Fleets descending. Chains. Control harnesses forced into flesh. Implants driven into neural pathways. The first roar of captivity. Myra's hands tightened slightly against its armor. "I know," she whispered. The dragon's eye opened again. Brighter now. Not enraged. Awakened. The council thrones flickered as the resonance interfered with their grave stabilizers. The High Chancellor's composure cracked. "Terminate the projection." "We can't," the engineer stammered. "It's biological." The dragon was not attacking. It was remembering. And it was making them remember. The final image filled the chamber. A dragon kneeling voluntarily beside a human settlement. Not dominated. Not controlled. Aligned. The light faded slowly. Silence followed. Thick. Heavy. The dragon lowered its head again. Not submissive. Resolved. It shifted one massive step forward. The containment barrier sparked violently. Cracks spider-webbed across the energy field. Security forces aimed their weapons, trembling. "Fire if it breaches," someone shouted. Myra stepped directly in front of the dragon. Between it and the barrier. "Stop," she said calmly. The dragon halted instantly. Not because of force. Because of trust. The council stared down in disbelief. The High Chancellor's voice faltered. "What are you?" Myra looked up at him. "Human. Small. Unarmed." "You turned a guardian into an executioner," she said evenly. The dragon's wings folded slowly behind her. "You forgot what it was." The chamber lights flickered as the containment field collapsed entirely. The dragon did not advance. Did not burn. Did not destroy. It simply stood beside her. Free of command. Free of override. And remembering. Above them, the council realized something far worse than rebellion had just occurred. Their greatest weapon was never truly theirs. And the human girl they meant to sacrifice had awakened something they had tried to bury for centuries. The containment barrier shattered. Not in an explosion. In silence. The energy dome that had caged the dragon for centuries flickered, cracked, and dissolved into nothing but fading light. No alarms triggered. No emergency lockdown engaged. The control systems were still online. But they were no longer in charge. The dragon stepped forward. Stone fractured beneath its claws. The galleries erupted in panic. Council security units rushed to form defensive lines across the elevated platforms. Plasma rifles locked onto the creature's massive frame. "Hold positions. Do not let it ascend." The High Chancellor's voice shook despite his effort to control it. "Engage suppression." Weapons fired. Blue-white energy bolts streaked downward toward the pit. The dragon's wings snapped outward in a thunderous arc. The projectile struck its scales. And dissipated. Not deflected. Absorbed. The ember glow beneath its armor intensified. Not in pain. In power. Myra stood directly beneath its outstretched wing. Protected. Not by order. By choice. The dragon lifted its head slowly. And roared. But the roar was not aimed at her. It was aimed upward. At the council. The sound was not chaotic rage. It was resonance amplified. Ancient. Commanding. The chamber trembled. Thrones destabilized in midair. Stone pillars cracked along their foundations. The banners of dominant species fell in burning tatters as shockwaves rippled through the hall. Councillors clutched their seats. For the first time in living memory, they looked small. The dragon stepped closer to the wall of the pit. Its body coiled with terrifying precision. One powerful leap. And it landed on the upper platform. Not crashing blindly. Not flailing. Deliberate. Security forces fired again. The dragon swept one massive wing forward. A controlled blast of heated air, not flame, knocked soldiers backward without incinerating them. Weapons clattered across stone. The High Chancellor stumbled to his feet. "Destroy it." "No," a council engineer shouted desperately. "Energy output exceeds chamber capacity. If we escalate, the entire structure collapses." The dragon advanced one slow step. Each claw strike cracked polished obsidian flooring. Councillors retreated. Their hovering thrones drifting backward in disorder. The dragon did not pursue aggressively. It did not slaughter. It did not incinerate. It stood tall above them. Dominant. Unrestrained. Myra climbed from the pit below, scaling fractured stone until she reached the platform level. She walked calmly through the chaos. No guard dared stop her. Because the dragon's molten gaze tracked every movement around her. She stopped beside its foreleg. Placed her hand gently against the glowing scales. Easy, she said softly. The dragon's wings lowered slightly. The ember glow dimmed from blinding to steady. Not submission. Restraint. The High Chancellor stared down at her, trembling. You cannot control it. Myra looked up calmly. I don't. The dragon's massive head lowered until its eye was level with the council. Its breath rolled across them in a wave of heat. You built cages, Myra continued. Implants. Overrides. She glanced briefly at the neural scar along the dragon's neck where control tech had once been embedded. You thought obedience meant ownership. The dragon's tail lashed once. A nearby throne toppled and shattered. Councillors flinched. This chamber was meant to show your power, Myra said. She stepped forward. Small. Human. Standing in front of the most feared creature in the galaxy. But today it shows something else. The dragon raised its head again. Its wings spread to their full, terrifying span. Not in attack. In declaration. The High Chancellor's voice cracked. What do you want? Myra did not hesitate. Freedom. The word echoed in the vast hall. The dragon's ember glow flared once more, not violently. Affirming. Council systems flickered erratically. Override implants inside the dragon's neural pathways began to burn out completely, incinerated from within by its own reclaimed power. No external command would ever bind it again. The High Chancellor collapsed back into his fractured throne. You would dismantle centuries of order. Myra met his gaze. You dismantled it the moment you forgot what this creature was. Silence spread outward like a wave. The dragon turned its massive body slightly. Not facing the council. Facing outward. Toward the open sky beyond the chamber's upper windows. It roared again. But this time, the roar carried beyond the city. Across the capital. Through orbital relays. Into the wider galaxy. It was not a threat. It was a signal. And systems across dozens of worlds heard it. The dragon stepped back from the council. Returned to stand behind Myra instead. Guarding her. Choosing her. The power dynamic had inverted completely. The council did not command the dragon. The dragon chose not to destroy them. And that choice was far more terrifying. Myra turned one final time toward the trembling assembly. You wanted a sacrifice. She gestured lightly toward the dragon. You woke a guardian. The dragon folded its wings slowly behind her. The chamber stood cracked. The thrones shattered. The banners fallen. But no blood spilled. No indiscriminate destruction. Because this was not vengeance. It was revelation. And the Galactic Council, for the first time in centuries, had no control over what came next. The dragon did not burn the chamber. It did not strike down the council. It did something far more devastating. It refused to kneel. The once grand execution hall stood fractured and dim. Cracked stone pillars leaned at unnatural angles. The hovering thrones flickered weakly as grave stabilizers struggled to recalibrate. Councillors remained frozen where they stood. Not because they were trapped. Because they had never prepared for this outcome. The dragon stood behind Myra. Massive. Unchained. Free. Its molten gaze moved slowly across the elevated thrones. Not hunting. Judging. The High Chancellor attempted to steady himself. You cannot leave with it, he said hoarsely. It is council property. The dragon's ember glow brightened faintly at that word. Property. Myra did not raise her voice. It was never yours. Across the chamber, control panels sparked as engineers tried one last time to regain neural override. The signal transmitted. Failed instantly. The implants embedded within the dragon's spine were gone, burned out by its own reawakened energy. No leash remained. No command line. No failsafe. For the first time in centuries, the dragon existed without a master. Security units hesitated. Weapons remained lowered. Because no one wanted to be the first to provoke what they could no longer contain. The dragon lowered its massive head slightly beside Myra. Not submission. Alignment. The High Chancellor tried again. You are destabilizing galactic order. Myra looked up at him calmly. You destabilized it when you turned guardians into executions. Silence pressed down across the chamber. But the reckoning did not end there. Beyond the capital city, news had already begun to spread. The dragon's roar had carried through orbital relays. Across encrypted channels. Into trade networks. Into border colonies. Within minutes, footage from the execution chamber leaked. The sacrifice that failed. The dragon that refused. The girl who stood unafraid. Across dozens of systems, Questions ignited. If the council could not command its greatest weapon, what else had they lost control of? In the chamber, the dragon took one slow step toward the shattered outer wall. The sky beyond glowed violet with the onset of evening. Orbital fleets shifted nervously in formation overhead. Targeting systems flickered to life. Then shut down again. Because no commander wanted to fire the first shot. Myra walked beside the dragon. Each of her steps measured. Steady. No triumph in her expression. No hatred. Only resolve. The dragon paused at the edge of the broken wall. Its wings unfolded fully for the first time in centuries. Stone disintegrated beneath their span. Heat shimmered around its body. The High Chancellor's voice cracked. If you leave, the Council will declare humanity in open rebellion. Myra stopped. She turned back one last time. You already did. The dragon's eye flared brighter. Not in rage. In clarity. The Council saw it then. They had not just lost control of a creature. They had lost control of the narrative. For generations, the dragon had symbolized fear. Now it symbolized something else. Choice. The dragon looked down at Myra. Waiting. She nodded once. That was all. The dragon leapt. Massive wings beat downward. A shockwave rippled across the chamber. Debris scattered. Counselors clung to broken thrones as wind roared through the hall. And then, they were gone. The dragon ascended into open sky. Not fleeing. Not rampaging. Flying. Free. Myra stood balanced against its armored neck as it rose above the capital city. Below them, crowds gathered in streets, staring upward. Not screaming. Not running. Watching. The dragon circled once above the city. A deliberate arc. Not threatening. Announcing. Then it turned toward the horizon. Toward the outer territories. Toward the systems where humanity had refused to kneel. In orbit, fleet commanders received a single updated directive from the Council. Engagement suspended. Observe only. Emergency session convened immediately. New decrees drafted under pressure from allied species. Human detainment policies suspended pending review. Dragon entity reclassified as autonomous guardian species. Council authority under formal inquiry. Across the galaxy, the legend spread faster than any official statement could suppress it. The Council had tried to make an example of a human go. Instead, they exposed their own weakness. High above the atmosphere, Myra rested one hand against the dragon's scales. Wind rushed past her face. Stars bright beyond the fading daylight. You don't belong to them, she whispered. The dragon's rumble vibrated beneath her palm. Agreement. Below, the capital city grew smaller. The council chamber a cracked scar in stone. Myra did not look back again. The dragon soared toward open space. Toward forgotten worlds. Toward places where guardians were needed, not controlled. And the final archive transmission from the capital read. They offered her as sacrifice to prove their power. They revealed instead who truly possessed it. The galaxy had feared the dragon. It never expected the human girl beside it to be the one thing the council feared more. Choice.